Alright, welcome to week 12 of the ISUZU revival. So we got a bunch of new stuff to show you. Got a lot of work, a lot of measuring, a lot of mocking up to do, so stay tuned. We got some coilovers and some Sparcos, so stay tuned. Alright, so basically it's been about 2-3 weeks since I've been able to work on the ISUZU. Been swamped with work down in San Diego, and in that meantime I actually started working with this Baja team, Team Casey Racing. So he's actually the guy that provided me with a lot of these parts for this build, so I gotta give a huge shout out to him. Can't wait to see what we've got in store over there, so maybe some content on that in the future. But so let's check out what I got. Alright, first off, these are Qa1 dual adjustable coilovers for a C5/C6 Corvette. You can probably imagine the spring rates are much too high for something like a 2,600 pound mini truck, but that won't stop us. We can always get those exchanged. These coilovers are very customizable, so that shouldn't be an issue at all. And in the cab, we got some Evo 2 Sparco racing seats fixed back. These are off of one of their racing cars, and yes, they are destroyed. That's alright. At this stage in the build, what's most important is that I have the mounting pattern, so I can make my seat brackets. Do that first, then determine which angle I'd like the steering column to be at. Then I can start fabricating the mounts for the steering rack, which is hanging loosely down there. Then I can come back maybe a year, a couple months later, and get them reupholstered, which shouldn't be too much, hopefully, but we'll see. But for now, I gotta do some service on the charger, so we gotta do quick oil change. Got a filter? Yeah, I got a filter. And we gotta do diff fluid. It's at 93K without a fluid change, so it's about time. I'm underneath the back of my car right now. This is the drain plug for the fluid. It's a 14mm hex, and I don't have that, so I welded this thing, and that basically just slides into there, and then I can put a 17mm big boy wrench on that, and then loosen it like that. Alright, so we're working on seat fitment. So I used a couple 2x4s and some shims to get the seat into the place I would like it to be, so check it out. Alright, so the seat's in the position that I would like it to be. I sat in it for a while, fake drove the wheel for a little bit, made sure I like it, used some 2x4s to get that. It is pretty much dead on with the steering column, so that's pretty good. Visibility looks comfortable, so made this bracket. Right now it's resting on the frame and these 2x4s, of course, so this bracket I made here will sit in the groove of the frame there, and the hole marked for drilling is about 1/4 inch higher than that of the chassis, so it should have a 1/4 inch clearance at like its mounting point. Well, skipped ahead a bit, but the brackets for the seat are done enough for now. The body itself is identical from right to left, so I'll just reuse the same templates I had. The welds are atrocious, of course, as usual, but that's alright because they'll be boxed in with some 16 gauge gusseting, and I'll put some dimple dies and make it look nice. But that won't happen until the roll cage is in there, because I'm probably going to connect the seat brackets to the roll cage. Got to make sure that that's allowed in regulation. Another thing I'm actually very worried about is the crossbar in the back. Not totally sure if this seat fitment is going to allow for it. I'll have to check the dimensions and see. Most importantly, now that the seat is in the place that it's going to be for quite some time, and at least from left to right, I can now sit in it and start to work on the steering column, because if you look under here, it's about time that we start mounting up the Camaro steering rack, and in order to do that we have to make the steering column fit as well, and in order to do that we have to know where the steering wheel is going to be, and I think you get the idea. Alright, continuing along with the power steering. So, we have got this power steering rack in a position in which the shaft clears both the motor mounts and the chassis, which was very hard to do, with also keeping in mind that we have to leave clearance for the U-joint of the steering itself. So with that being said, there's this big old little bracket that bolts onto the subframe that we modify as well as the original piece. It's made out of 1/8 inch steel, which is massively too light duty for this, so I'm going to make some 3/16 inch strengthening brackets that go to those bolt holes up to the original bolt holes for the suspension on the dog bones. So I want to make this strengthening bracket here removable, because if I don't and it's welded to the frame and to this bracket, the removal of the steering rack itself is going to be extremely difficult. Let's go to the other side. It's a different case. So this is the passenger side, and it is currently being held up by 2 zip ties tethered together. And it's different because it uses the same method that most modern sway bars use. It's a bushing over a metal clamp, and originally it was upside down from this configuration here, but since it turns on itself relative to the mounting point over there, we will be able to make some small box section and just bolt it straight up to the chassis from the bottom. Alright, quick update on the fabrication we got going on here. We have the steering rack and the steering column in place. So we are utilizing the Camaro hardware up to some custom bracketry. So we have one 1/8 plate that's horizontal that this locks into, and there's also a 3/16 bolt-in-able gusset that we use as a strengthener in the Y direction, or I guess the Z direction technically. The steering column itself is shortened right here. It was shortened about 4 inches. And if we go to the cab, we have a custom bracket to hold the steering column in. There will be one more for that bolt hole there. So it still wobbles a little bit, but it's fully connected. You can see as I turn here, you can see all that stuff spin around down there, which is pretty freaking cool. So I obviously had to remove the motor to get all this stuff done, and as you stare at this engine bay here, the keen of you will notice that I have attempted at putting a different method of motor mount, and that is because the motor mounts that were originally in place there are going to interfere with the steering rack. And the way I see it, I would rather modify the engine mounts than the steering rack, because if I modify the steering rack and I break this one and I buy another one, I don't want to have to modify that one also. So this way it's all bolt in, no worries. Servicing will be easy because there will be plenty more room there. The problem I'm having with this thing, although it works just fine when everything's bolted in, again, servicing is a lot more difficult because dropping the engine down onto these plates and aligning everything is very difficult, and also the bell housing of the transmission contacts this and would most certainly bind up if there was another one on that side as well. So what I want to do is make this thing just bolt on and offable. So rather than having it weld onto the frame like this motor mount, this is going to have a flange and a bolt. So I'm going to have to redesign it again, but I think I would rather spend more time redesigning and making it elegant such that when I do service it, because I have a feeling that this motor is going to be removed a lot of times, that I'm going to want it to be easy. So simple as that. Now the next step, we have the big things. Oops, fell on the jack. The big things are in. So we have the steering rack, the steering column, that was backwards, the motor, obviously, and the next biggest thing would be the brake booster. So I got to go rip that out of the Camaro and get on that. But sadly, my spring brake has come to an end. So I'm gonna have to end it there. We got a lot done, and I'm really excited to keep working on this, and I already have so much motivation seeing this seat in here, seeing the steering wheel, seeing the steering rack move. It's freaking awesome. So I have enough inspiration to keep me drawing and keep me buying parts and stuff. So stay tuned for more stuff. See ya.